How's it going, everybody? So today's video is something slightly different, and this is an explainer video about a very interesting scientific debate which is going on right now. And the debate is about Tyrannosaurus rex, and particularly if we can make conclusions about how smart this animal was. And of course there are problems here. So if we had a Tyrannosaurus rex, and if we would want to do cognitive tests with it, so put it in a maze and see how quickly it would get out, it would probably kill us and eat us. But that's of course not happening because these animals have been extinct for a long time, about 66 million years. So what we need to do is we need to extrapolate from fossils and from living relatives of these dinosaurs. Now, so two things. Why am I talking about this? So if you look at my YouTube channel and listen to, and also read my recent scientific work, you will come to the conclusion that my main interest is fishes, which is correct. But my initial scientific training, my doctoral thesis, was in neuroscience. So I'm still following that field, and that's why I came across this very interesting debate, and I believe that it's interesting to the viewership of my channel. And the purpose of this video is a explanation for the general public. There are lots of technical details, but I think the interested laywoman and layman interested in biology would be interested in this debate too. Now then, I want to say something else. My appreciation to everybody who is involved in that debate. And contrary to what maybe the general public would think, a debate is something good. It doesn't mean that scientists are confused and that they can't make up their mind. It's a healthy thing, right? That somebody comes up with a hypothesis, and then somebody else tries to disprove that hypothesis. So in this kind of exchange, that's very often how scientific progress is made. Now, if you have any more questions, please, obviously leave a comment. Also leave a comment if you like the T-Rex here, or if you think it's childish. Now, how did that debate start? So a neuroscientist, and I apologize in advance for probably butchering her Brazilian name with my Germanic accent, Susanne Herculano Houzel, proposed that it's possible to estimate the brain power of these guys. And how did she propose that? Well, so you have something what's called an endocast. So you can look at fossils, and then you can look at the volume in the skull, basically. And that volume will more or less be filled with the brain. But that's not enough, right? So that gives you a approximate value for brain size. But what really supposedly correlates with cognitive ability. So what do I mean with cognitive ability? smartness. Like, would these guys be just essentially dumb lizards, like the geckos, which are in our house here in the Philippines, or would they be cognitively complex, advanced animals, like these crow-like birds, or primates, baboons, or even great apes? Probably not great apes, but up to the level of a macaque or of a baboon, which is a very intelligent animal. So where would these guys be situated in this gradient? Now, there are scaling laws. So what is a scaling law? So you can take a small animal, and it will have a certain number of brain cells, and it will have a certain brain size, and certain brain regions will take up a certain number of the brain. Now then you take a related animal which is bigger, and all these brain parameters will change, and there will be a certain law, there will be a regularity, a rule in how, brain size and brain cell numbers will change when you increase the size of the animal. So this you can do for different groups of animals. And the question is, what kind of scaling rules do apply to these dinosaurs? Now, the initial hypothesis here was that the scaling rules apply to dinosaurs which are essentially close to these of birds. And particularly what birds have is that they have a very high density of neurons. So, per cubic centimeter, the number of brain cells, the number of computational units, if you will, is very high. And then if the same scaling rule applies to the Tyrannosaurus rex, and particularly in what's called the dorsal forebrain, which is, this walnut-shaped part of the human brain, the cortex, and it's not called a cortex in reptiles and birds, but it's the same type of structure. So in this structure, the density of brain cells is very high in birds. And then this original hypothesis proposes that it's the same scaling rules, or very similar ones, applied to these advanced dinosaurs. And then that would give the conclusion that there are about 3.3 billion brain cells in a Tyrannosaurus rex, which would put it in the forebrain, in the dorsal forebrain, which would put it on a level with a baboon, essentially. And baboons are tool users, for instance. They can poke around in a termite hill with a stick. So this would make this not just a giant, a scary giant, but this would make this a really, really intelligent animal. And then the original hypothesis in this debate was also that this would correlate with longevity, that these animals would live to about 42 years. And the hypothesis is also that this would correlate with heterothermy, that these animals would be warm-blooded. So this is all derived from the scaling rules. Now, there was an answer to this, and this answer was from a group of scientists led by Caspar. And so basically the counter-argument here is that in the original argument in this debate by Herculano Houzel, that there were a few technical mishaps in applying these scaling rules. And this is the part which for the layperson, but also for somebody like me, who is a neuroscientist, but who is not actively working in this field, these are some rather tricky technical details, but they matter. So what are these details? So for instance, these endocasts, right? So there is this volume in the skull where the brain lies. And so if you look at a mammal or a bird, all of the skull is filled with brain. But this is not the case, for instance, in an alligator or in a lizard. So there is a lot of connective tissue. So the actual brain doesn't fill the whole cavity in the skull. And so the issues like this. And then another issue is that the type of the counter-argument doubts that the scaling rules which apply to T-Rex would be the one for birds. And because, yes, obviously birds, and this is, probably common knowledge by now, birds evolved from a group of dinosaurs, but, these large brain properties of birds and, this filling the skull completely, this probably evolved rather late. And the other thing is that there are supposedly some inconsistencies in estimating the brain size. So there are these things which are called the olfactory bulbs involved in smelling, and these were sometimes included, sometimes not. So what seems to be somewhat of a technicality, technical details, essentially, if you then, and there were a few more like this, if you redo this analysis, you come to the conclusion that the T-Rex was not on the level of a baboon or of a a smart bird, of a macaque. So that this was rather an animal which was rather lizard-like in intelligence. And the other conclusion from the paper by Caspar, or the other claim, which I will get to whether I agree with this or not, is that absolute brain size and absolute forebrain neuron number is maybe not the best proxy for cognitive complexity or intelligence of an animal. So essentially, this counter argument took a couple of important technical details and redid the analysis and came to the conclusion: no, T-Rex was not as smart as a baboon. Now, again, very interesting debate. What's my take on this? My not 2 cents, because I'm in the Philippines, my 2 pesos. So my take is that I sympathize with the notion that dinosaurs, which dominated the land fauna of the planet for something like 170 million years plus, where that they evolved some really highly intelligent forms. But at the same time, I think the technical execution in the answer, in the counter-argument paper by Caspar, I think it's a very good and very convincing to me. And so then one argument which they make is, and they point that out, is that there is a group of dinosaurs which are called Maniraptiformes. And these are probably, not probably, these are the closest to living birds. And that, these large brain nests, which a lot of birds have, this already evolved in these animals. Now, if there was anything, like a crow or a baboon-like dinosaur in terms of cognition, this would have been these. And so, this is actually something they point out in their discussion. So I think, this, so, we could conclude, if we want to, this is such a cool notion, right? Dinosaurs were smart, and that they were not dumb lizards, but they were not just were they gigantic and with big teeth, but they were also really bright. And yeah, this might still have happened, but just not with T-Rex, but with dinosaurs which were closer to birds. And the other point they make, and I actually really agree with this, is that large brain size is not always a good proxy for high cognitive ability. So big muscles generally lead to big strength. Like a rhinoceros will be stronger than a mouse. There are more muscles. But for the brain is such a complex organ that the exact setup and the connections are more important than the number of neurons and the connectivity. So my favorite example, and I've actually made videos about that before, I'm linking to them, is the cleaneras, Labruites dimidiatus, which is a fish which removes other the parasites of other fishes. So it goes around these other fish and then picks off the parasites. And then this fish has greatly learned how to read the body language of other fish. The notion is that it has Machiavellian intelligence. It can play some of its host against others, and it passes what's called a mirror test. So this, like a great ape, not like a primate, can, not like a macaque, for instance, can recognize itself in the mirror. So, this is a wrasse, a lipfish, which is about this size. And there are hundreds of similarly sized lipfishes, which are not nearly as clever. So, you know, as amazing as it is to look at these scaling rules, and I think, you know, they're very insightful for a lot of things. But I think with cognitive capacity, it might sometimes just, you know, there's a plateau which we reach in terms of what we can explain, you know, this can go in both ways. That, like in the case of the RAS, we have a very smart small animal, and of course there are cases of very large animals which are not actually that cognitively complex. So, you know, again, thanks to all the scientists who participated in this debate, and I think it's fascinating. I think this is really worth thinking through, and I hope you found this interesting, and see you next week again with footage of fish from the Philippines. Bye!